Well, I think it's time I chime in on the San Francisco 49er quarterback situation, controversy, issue, whatever you want to call it. Of course, the 49ers will say, well, there's no issue here. We've transitioned from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance. Trey is the starter. That's what Kyle Shanahan has said. Jimmy has taken a pay cut to be the backup. He didn't find a starting job. A lot of people will attribute that to his injuries and surgery, blah, blah, blah. Nobody wanted to take a risk, etc., etc., etc. I'm just going to chime in my two parts. It seemed like a weird situation at best, if you ask me. You've got a guy that took you to the NFC Championship game, who took you to a Super Bowl, and you're telling him you're not good enough for us. We got this rookie that we're going with, this untried, unproven rookie who has potential, and they traded up to get him. And then Garoppolo took a big pay cut, said, that's part of the job, part of being a pro. You set the egos aside. I'm comfortable with my role. And that's commendable. But I'm really wondering what's going on behind the scenes in terms of everybody's emotions and mentality. For instance, the 49ers, they vote on captains. They voted their top 8 players to be captains. I believe, if I read this correctly, Trey Lance was number 8, while Kyle Shanahan decided, well, we're only going to have 7 captains. So that seems kind of curious to me, with the explanation that, well, only 6 can go out on the field for the coin toss, so it doesn't make sense to have an 8th type of thing. Okay, that's fine. And then he's also made comments, Kyle Shanahan, I want my players to have Trey's back. Okay, why does he have to say that? Wouldn't the players naturally have his back? And, if you read what some of the players say, they say things like, we are all behind 100% in. If something happens, we got Trey's, we're behind Trey. If something happens, Jimmy's there to step in. I'm really wondering, in terms of I was able to go into that locker room and take a survey of all the players and figure out percentages, is everyone totally bought in on Trey Lance? Or do some people still kind of like, hey, Jimmy's been really good for us? Steve Young, he knows all about controversy, being from San Francisco and Joe Montana and the whole enchilada. Took him to the Super Bowl, won one or two. He weighed in and said, well, this is a chance for Jimmy to change the narrative. He was good enough for the 49ers to get him there, but he quite hasn't made the leap in terms of a consistent starter. There's essentially something missing that Jimmy has to improve on before teams will see him as a starter and make the effort to get him on their team, kind of a thing. And the knock against Garoppolo, he doesn't handle pressure well. Maybe he doesn't, from reading Young's comments, maybe he doesn't study film as much as people think he should. There's something that's rubbing Kyle Shanahan wrong. It's very similar to Sean McVay with Jeff Goff, who got him to the Super Bowl, but then it kind of went downhill from there. And something similar has happened in San Francisco with Jimmy Garoppolo. The difference is Goff is in Detroit. Detroit seems happy with him. Rams have Stafford. The 49ers moved up in the draft, made a bunch of draft night trades to get him, and then re-signed Garoppolo. They weren't really willing to just let him walk free. So that's a good question. In terms of the narrative that Jimmy has to change, what does he need to do so that teams see him as a legitimate, consistent starter that can take him to the promised land? This whole San Francisco 49er quarterback situation, controversy, issue, narrative, whatever you want to call it, reminds me in a way of way back in the 90s, the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones, Jimmy Johnson were feuding, but they'd come on air and say, oh no, they'd say it's a love fest, we're like brothers. Mike Ditka, the former player, coach at that time, an NFL analyst, talking about the Jerry Jones, Jimmy Johnson saga, said, well, if I didn't know any better, I'd say one of them's lying, but I know better. They're both lying. Enough said. I don't need to say more. So I don't know. It just seems like a mess to me. It seems like a public relations mess, a coaching mess. Everybody has to keep talking about egos and backing this guy and backing that guy. It just seems like a convoluted mess. And it's totally different if you will, I guess, than Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers, with Favre just said, I'm not his mentor. I'm not his coach. In San Francisco, Garoppolo seems willing to take Trey under his wing, kind of a thing. But you got to still believe Garoppolo, having been to the promised land himself, wants to be a starter. So maybe his strategy, you be a backup, you improve, you let Trey handle all the pressure. You're there if he falters, he gets injured, the 49ers don't do well, and then you step in, and then I believe as a free agent after this year, perhaps he can get a much better deal than what he's getting. So it might be he and his agent, Garoppolo, he and his agent sitting down saying, well, this is a strategy we should pursue, and they're kicking in their strategy. But from a whole San Francisco, look at how much time and effort everybody has been putting into trying to figure out what the heck is going on there. And we all hear what Shanahan says and John Lynch and team players and all this stuff, but come on. When you get to that level, you're going to have some sort of ego. Even Jimmy's got to have a little bit of an ego in there somewhere. And I don't know if Trey is all that thrilled about having Garoppolo along, behind him, because he knows if he falters, that guy's taking over. Talk about pressure, all the time pressure. Anyways, I just find it kind of a weird, distracting, who knows what's going on type deal. I guess it'll just play out as the season goes on. What more can they do at this point? That's the narrative, if you want to ask me. So anyways, my 2 cents worth. Over and out.